Hello, I'm Wendy McGean, and today my guest is Louise LeBrun, the founder of WEL-Systems. And I can honestly say that WEL-Systems is something that I've been in and around probably for the last 6 years, and it's definitely been a game changer in my life. So Louise, welcome, and thank you so much for doing this. I wonder if I could turn it over to you to introduce yourself so that you can tell us what you'd like us to know about you.
First of all, thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate being part of this lovely creation that you have brought to life. I've been enjoying the conversations and listening to the interaction with you and with your guests. So thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you.
Well, let's see. Yes, I am the founder of the WEL-Systems Institute and the creator of that body of knowledge. It's been about, I was thinking today, I was trying to get a sense of sort of the depth of conversations that I've been in over the last 30 years. And I figure that I've been in this conversation in some way, probably 5 hours a day of my life for the last 28 years.
Wow.
So that's a lot of conversation.
Yeah.
And that comes from having made the decision to have my personal evolution be my work. So I think for most people, they have their work and then they try to weave their evolution into the time that's left over from their work. And I really lived a charm. Oh, can you hear that? Can you hear they're blasting across the street from me.
No, I don't hear it.
Sorry. So every now and then you might hear something and the building might shake, but could be the conversation.
It could be.
Yeah, so I was thinking about that, and I was thinking that's tens of thousands of hours talking about what it is to be human and human evolution and the things that matter and creating meaningful lives. And this was my moment-to-moment experience. So to have lived a life like that, really, to have lived a life that's really been devoted to human evolution on a significant scale has really been an incredible gift to me. I guess I would think of it as the gift I gave myself, right?
That's pretty incredible. And I've been in like programs with people where you're not present, but the ripple effect is there because we were all there because of your work. And one of the concepts that you talk about is green dot moments, which are those aha moments.
Yes.
And as I'm listening to you talk, I'm realizing the one of the questions that really is at the tip of my tongue is, what was the green dot moment for you at the very beginning that made you realize that this was going to be your life's work?
Well, I think of the green dot moment as the gift that I allow myself when I embrace the sensory cues in my body. And by virtue of doing that, my nervous system sort of redesigns itself. And by virtue of that, I have an insight. Mm-hmm. So that insight, that is the green dot moment for me.
Okay.
Mine came, well, I think I was 28 years old and I'm 73. So that was a very long time ago. Mm-hmm. When I literally fell back onto my bed in total despair and surrender. And something happened. And at the time that it happened, I couldn't have told you what was going on, but it profoundly transformed me, my world, and the way that I saw myself moving through my world. And then I spent the rest of my life trying to figure out what happened. Like having had the experience, living my life profoundly differently from something that took maybe 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. And up until that point, I had really been working at it and, taking courses and going to trainings and getting certified and reading hundreds of books and listening to audio materials constantly. And then realizing that I was fine until I was really my back was pressed up against the wall. And then I would revert to the patterns inside me that had been deeply ingrained over time. And yet in basically 3 minutes, it transformed my perceptual filters. It transformed my body. It transformed the way that I processed thought. And then I spent the rest of my life trying to figure out what that was all about. So the material that's been developed over time through the Institute, the programs and the books and the audio materials and all of that, they're basically sharing the application of the things that I've discovered that worked for me, and then generalize so that other people would be able to embrace them as well for themselves to the degree that they chose to do that. So that was a green dot moment that really set me on a whole different path. And now, as I look back on it 30 some years later, my continuing green dot moments are in the same category of my own evolution and looking at human evolution as a generalization.
Mhm.
But they're very different because I'm not 28 anymore, I'm 73.
Mhm.
So my green dot moments come around very different things. They come around the concept of aging, for example, and what does that mean? And to what degree does that include consideration of death? You know, my own death, but also looking at, I'm at the age now where people that have been in my life start dying.
Mhm.
So it's really looking at how does death fit into the creation of a joyous life? And then being able to look at that, and a lot of my green dot moments are also around letting go.
Mhm.
So it's being able to look at no longer standing in the place where I am drawn to being leader in an organization or in a collective or in a school of thought, but really looking at myself as the support for the evolution of leader self in others. So being able to kind of keep disappearing, kind of fading into the background, but really looking at being called to those who really hold themselves as leader self in the expression of their own being in a way that also creates the opportunity for transformation for other people. So I don't think the green moments ever stop, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay.
They change though.
And I think I agree. And one of the things that struck me this summer, it was a very challenging summer for me. Just the things that were going on in the backdrop of my life. And I found myself slipping back into patterns that I thought I had let go. And it was by the time kind of summer came to a close, and I guess around the middle of September, I kind of sat down to reflect, and I realized that there was a lot of things that went on, and I did feel like I was going backward for a while. But in fact, I was aware of what was going on the entire time. It just took me a little longer to react to it and to act maybe than I would have liked. Because at one point, I remember talking to my good friend Noreen, who actually introduced me to WEL-Systems like in 2016, having a chat with her once, and she said, "Well, we're never one and done. Like we're coming back with different things, and we're constantly evolving. So we're never going to get to a point where we're perfect, right? Like we're human,
You're
and
never finished."
yeah, exactly. And that used to kind of depress me, and now it excites me because I'm never finished. With every breath, there's a new opportunity.
Right. You never fully cooked.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess I'm fascinated by the fact that you had these realizations at 28, and I'm going to be 60 next year. And I was probably in my early to mid 40s when I suddenly decided I don't like the way I'm living my life, and felt powerless to do anything about it. I've set these things in motion. This is my role. This is what I do. This is who I am. And it took me probably about 10 years of now what I realized being depressed, and then thinking one day, you can't do this anymore. This is no way to live a life. And then setting in motion all sorts of actions that, well, I kind of blew up my life. And coming to the realization through WEL-Systems and some other coach training that I've taken that, again, you're never done. And we can start all over again at any moment. Do you see a big difference in your clientele from the people that notice this stuff early, and the latecomers like me that kind of figure it out in their 50s?
I would say it has less to do with age and it has more to do with intensity.
Okay.
I think people, at whatever age it happens to occur for them, they reach a place where the intensity that ramps up in them from the life that they're living and noticing the life that they're living equates with an absence of something. I think that's when people take action, quite frankly. I started young or younger than perhaps you were drawn to do so because I was crazy. So no, seriously, not really nuts. So there were a lot of things that were going on in my life that it became very clear if I kept doing those things, I'd be dead. Okay. So I really had to, it was the intensity of all of that and the recognition that this intellect that I had that had served me well up until that point in time was really contributing to my demise. And I didn't know any other way to do it. Mm-hmm. So the degree of intensity and the literal danger that was attached to not doing something was really the provocation, I think, for the intensity of the response. So the intensity of it was a dangerous time for me. The intensity of that propelled the intensity of my determination for evolution. So I think it's more difficult when people are comfortable in their potentially meaningless life, because there is no risk. There is no danger to them. It's like the drip, drip, drip of monotony, but it doesn't feel, it feels annoying. It feels agitating. It feels irritating, but have another glass of wine and you can solve that problem, or, or run or do whatever. But I think that there's a dance of intensity between what drives you and then the level that you bring to your own commitment to your evolution. And I think it is what it is. I don't have a feeling. For me, it had to be a certain way because of the risks that were attached to it for me for not doing something. But for other people, as I said, the risk isn't there. So the intensity isn't necessarily there.
One of the things that it took me a while to realize is that I am responsible for my life.
That sucks, eh?
I know, but again, it opens up the possibilities because it's like, okay, what's holding you back? Yeah. And we tend to be, we talk about nested living systems in WEL-Systems, about how we learn things and we just take for granted that that's just the way that it is. Mm-hmm. And it took me a long time to really own the fact, even after I started with WEL-Systems and I read it on the page and I thought, yeah, that makes sense. I didn't own that for years because I didn't realize what it truly meant. And it really does mean that in every breath, I can make a different choice.
Yes.
It also is kind of scary because it means that nobody else is responsible for my reactions in my life.
Right.
And for a long time, I like to blame my circumstances or the fact that this person did that or that person said that. Has nothing to do with it.
Right.
I get to choose. And that to me might be one of the biggest green dot moments that I kind of started to forget this summer. And it was like, oh, hold on, what are you doing here? and I started this video series back in May, and I did a couple in the summer. When I go back and watch them, I can see that I was not the same person. I was sliding back. And it was only in the last one that I did, I thought, there you are, you're coming.
Yeah. And it was interesting because I watched that emergence as well.
Really?
Right? I think it speaks to, and that's why I hold myself as really having lived this charmed life. I think it speaks to the incredible importance of being in the conversation.
Yes.
Because if you're not in a focused, intentional, directed conversation about your own evolution, you're talking about the weather. You're talking about grocery shopping, you're gossiping about somebody, you're doing whatever. What I mean is that when you're not talking about your own evolution, you're still talking about something, but it's typically meaningless. Mm-hmm. So when you focus on context and process.
Mhm.
When you allow the content of whatever it is that's unfolding in your life to take a back seat, or to be the provocation for consideration of your life through process and context, life changes very quickly. And very quickly, you get to determine, intuitively what's meaningful and what isn't. So what are you engaging because it really is contributing to your life? And what are you engaging because you've engaged that way for 30 years? How much of it is habit and how much of it is actually a conscious, intentional choice that is moving you in the direction of becoming who you know yourself to be? Those are very different conversations.
Well, yes, and that habituation it's sneaky and it's tricky, because like I said, this summer I realized that I tended to be like a do-it-yourselfer. Like I like to stay in my little box and I can do this, and I kind of get involved in all sorts of things, but it's like you say, you can't evolve in a closet. You have to be in the conversation, and you have to be getting that input from someplace else to bounce ideas off of, and whatever. And when I get really overwhelmed or stressed, I revert back to that. I do stuff by myself, and you lose the beauty of that creation that comes out of having a conversation with someone.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it in terms of, and this is how I live my life, everybody that enters the structure of my reality is an aspect of my consciousness calling to me to be noticed. So that means that everybody that moves through my life, every situation, is always about me. And it's always the invitation for me to discover more about myself. And that is what the whole process of becoming is about. I think the unfortunate part is that there are many people for whom change, evolution, quote unquote, transformation, whatever they want to call it, is tied to the idea that I'm in a program, I'm in reading a book, I'm listening to an audio tape, whatever it happens to be, but it really doesn't have anything to do with dinner tonight with my daughter and whether or not I'm actually going to show up in the conversation, particularly if I think my daughter finds me irritating. Right? So I keep those two things very separate. And yet where life is lived is in dinner with your daughter.
Yes.
Right? So we tend to separate and segregate the parts that contribute to our evolution, and we marvel or we struggle or we do whatever it is. But when we're actually in life living it, that's something that we hold over there for weekends. We only do that on the weekends, and it's Wednesday, so we're not going to do that today. When you can begin to meld those two things together so that you begin to notice you have the program, you have the event, you have the book, you have the audio material, whatever, and now you're having dinner with a friend, a colleague, a spouse, whatever it happens to be, you can be sure that whatever you've been doing over here is going to be reflected in that dinner. The question is, are you going to allow yourself to engage it when you notice it?
Yeah, that's self-awareness.
It will surface, and typically what we do is we push it away. We say, they're not interested. They really don't care. This is really all about me, so I'll take care of this when I go home, or I don't want to upset them, or they're not really into this. And so what we end up doing is we end up pretending that we're somebody we're not. And then we don't understand why we can't get any depth of connection with another person. And it's because we're not there.
Exactly. And that compartmentalizing also robs the people that we're talking to of the opportunity to grow as well.
Yes.
Because it's contagious. Once we get brave enough to start facing things in ourselves, other people will start to do the same thing.
Well, and what we forget is that we're always contagious.
Yes.
The question is, what are we spreading?
Yes.
So if I'm not being authentically myself in an exchange, I'm being inauthentic. And so therefore, what am I spreading when I'm inauthentic?
Yes.
I'm never not influencing my reality. The question is, am I influencing my reality mindfully and with intention? Or have I turned mindfulness and intentionality off? Then what I'm left with is habituation.
Yes.
Still
We
influence.
talk about the weather, and yeah.
Right. And so therefore, in that state, what I'm doing is I'm reinforcing the status quo.
Mhm.
So what does that spread? Right?
And I was reading something the other day. I'm rereading Dr. Joe Dispenza's Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And he talks about how by the time you're in your mid-30s, your personality is kind of set. And the way he describes it, 95% of what has evolved up until that time is what's there. And there's only 5% of your brain kind of thing that's starting to question and starting to figure out, is there a different way of doing this? And I find that fascinating and so true, because it's so difficult to observe ourselves and to admit that, or even say out loud, maybe I'm not doing something right here. Maybe there's a different way that I could be doing this. Because we kind of think we're cooked at one point, right? This is it. This is who I am. And for me, kind of going through life to a certain point and getting to a certain point without being authentic, without honoring what was important for me, I was like a cardboard cutout of someone, kind of going through the motions, right? Like it had gone so far that I reached a point where I thought, how do I ever change this? And you know, you said it can change in moments, but you have to be ready for it. So it's only time when it's time. And I think I'm rambling a little bit right now, but it's fascinating to me that a lot of people don't even consider what they're thinking about and how they're moving through the world. And, you know, I was like that for years. It didn't seem to be something that even interests me. And now that I'm kind of aware of it, that's all I want to, that's all I want to focus on.
I'm not sure that I would stand in the same place with the generalization that is presented in the book.
Okay.
I'm back to the degree of the leap comes from the motivation, and the motivation is tied to the intensity of the risk. Right? So I don't think, I mean, I would have said something very different when I was 25, because when I was 25, it was everybody else's fault, right? So I can relate to that part of what you were talking about. But I think there comes a point where we know something's not right.
Mhm.
And to what degree have we developed a tolerance for not right being okay in our lives? You know, these are the cards you were dealt. You have a really good life. You know, what do you have to moan about? The better your life, the more difficult it is to do things that are going to disrupt your good life.
Absolutely.
People whose lives suck are much more motivated to do something about it than people who have basically really good lives.
Mhm.
And they have a sense that something's missing, or they have a desire for something they can't even define for themselves. But that's more like an agitation and an irritation. It's not deep pain.
Yes.
I think when people are in deep pain, they're much more motivated for the pain to stop. So they're much more willing to look for ways to stop that pain. I look at it, and this is what the decloaking material is all about. The decloaking experience is really about presenting a very different set of perceptual filters through which to consider how you live. Because without a different set of perceptual filters as the possibility of an alternative, all you're left with is what you have.
Mhm.
So for a very long time in working with other people in this body of knowledge, I would repeat over and over and over again, your clients don't know that they need to be your clients until you educate them. Because without the educational component that says cultural conditioning up to and including age 7, create a state of a fixed reality. This is how the world is. And unless adults are given, in a way that appeases the conscious mind, new information that allows them to see that with a turn of the prism, you turn the kaleidoscope, and all of a sudden, things look very different to you. Now you have choice. But until you have those other perceptual filters, you think that the ones you're seeing through are reality. And they're not.
The only
They're
ones.
just a perceptual filter. And that perceptual filter is taking you down this path and creating that outcome in your life. But here's an alternative. So it isn't that this one's better than that one. It's that here's an alternative. And if you consider this one, now what does your life look like? So it isn't a value judgment about the perceptual filter. It's a realization of a desired outcome. Which of the outcomes from which of these perceptual filters is giving you a life that feels to you, this is a life I really want to live.
Yeah.
And now you have to learn how to adapt to living a very different life.
Yes. And at the beginning, when you start to get those feelings that you don't belong where you are, you don't belong in your own skin kind of thing, we don't have the language, we don't have the tools to even really know how to question them until we have those conversations. And I was really closed off. Like, I was the kind of person that I had to have all the answers. I had to be right and know it all. So to actually engage in a conversation with somebody else about that was an extremely difficult for me personally to do.
Right.
Some people are much more open to it. But even so, then when I first got in the conversation, and again, it was because of a good friend came to me, and I was in the middle of a burnout when I talked to her about it. And so the intensity was there, right? As you
Right.
described.
And the risk.
Yeah.
In the middle of a burnout, all of a sudden you start to question your capacity to even live your life.
Yes.
The level of risk that's attached to that, and that ramps up the intensity. So you become potentially much more willing to hear things and to look at things that over here, you may not have been prepared to do that.
Absolutely.
So I can appreciate this notion that, by the time you're 30, things are locked in and, X number. My feeling about it is it doesn't really matter what age you are. There's always 100% of you available to embrace and to engage in the creation of a different expression, a different version of who you know yourself to be. And you have to be educated into that.
Yes. And you have, and my whole belief system changed about what was possible. And that didn't happen easily. I mean, it was, again, I could read what was on the page and I could be in a conversation and it all made sense. But then when I went, it was like that compartmentalizing again.
Yeah.
Like at the early days when I was in WEL-Systems, it made perfect sense until I tried to figure out how to apply it in my own life. That's when I start saying I was a human doing instead of a human being.
Right.
I'd much prefer be a human being.
Well, and that applying it to your life is a double-edged sword too, because it means that, when you're, one of the reasons why we have these experiences in collectives is that you begin to notice, you're looking around you and you're noticing nobody's dying. Nobody is running, screaming from the room. Mm-hmm. Nobody is being banished because we don't talk like that here, or we don't talk about those things here. So you have an experience of having the content of the quote unquote program be the provocation for the experiences that surface for you. And then there's a process of support that gets you through the movement of that wave.
Yes.
And when you come out the other side of it, the idea is to look at that and say, okay, let's revisit your experience through these perceptual filters, these new ones. What do you notice about yourself, about your life when you revisit through those perceptual filters? And what happens is your capacity for perception expands. So all of us are culturally conditioned into tunnel vision about a particular structure of reality. Now, all of a sudden, you're beginning to notice that tunnel is starting to really expand.
Yes.
And when it does, you have new elements that can enter into the consideration of whatever it is that you're dealing with at the moment. And it creates change very quickly.
One of the things that I flipped in the way that I look at situations is I used to kind of look at things black and white. I would have a judgment about it. This is right, that's wrong.
Right.
And now realize that typically there's no right, wrong, good or bad. It's all context dependent. But to be curious as opposed to jumping to that judgment. And I still catch myself doing it from time to time, but a lot less than I used to. And that is so liberating. To see something in front of me and think, wow, that really pissed me off 3 years ago. And now just kind of wonder where that's coming from. And what am I feeling there? Like, what's going on there? Because it allows for that self-awareness.
Now, imagine if we parented our children that way.
Oh, I so wish I'd known this 40 years ago. Like, one of my big challenges is right now is to try to figure out is to be with my daughters in a way that we can rebuild some of the relationship that's been deteriorated over the last few years. And now I approach it with, what can I do? What's going on when this impulse comes up? Or when that ticks me off, or when I want to say, this is how it's done, and I stop myself. And it's an evolution, right? It's a bit of a dance. And all I can do is show up as me and let them be them and see what happens. Like, no.
Well, and I would add to that, and don't underestimate their potential.
Yes.
I think that in order to protect ourselves, we tell ourselves a story that, well, they're not up for it, and they're really not looking for this, and they didn't ask. And, I'm big on hijacking the conversation, right? But if engaging with someone you care deeply about requires that you pretend to be other than fully yourself, that's a recipe for things to compress and narrow. Whereas your willingness, this is my belief about it, the things that I've created over my lifetime happened because I was willing to have people get angry, have people dismiss a way that I move through the world, have people banish me. I've been banished many times. Have people mock a model of the world, or, I was in the early stages of everything that wasn't status quo was a conspiracy theory. Now we've run out of conspiracy theories because they've all been proven true. So we have to go find some new ones, right? So we have to keep expanding into our conspiracy theories. But that idea that we say to ourselves, I can't do that because that person will X or won't Z or whatever it happens to be. But I think the truth of it is, we don't want to risk having those experiences. We don't want to risk having somebody be angry. Yes. We don't want to risk being mocked or made fun of. We don't want to risk being banished. And so what happens is that we end up minimizing our own potential because we have already minimized their potential.
Yes.
Right? So we make ourselves small because we think someone else is not up to it. That means we've already made them small.
Yeah.
Right? Where I think my belief about it is that if you, show up and be yourself with grace,
yes,
that would always be a nice way to do it. It's not always possible. Life expands very quickly, and you find yourself in much more interesting and provocative and compelling explorations than, let's make a Christmas list.
Yeah. And it takes courage to challenge those things when we don't know what's going to happen. And I found personally for me in the past year that anger was one of those things that I avoided like the plague. Like I thought, oh, if I'm going to make somebody angry, or if I'm going to get angry, I'm not going to express that. It was a total blind spot for me. I had not seen it. And the day that I was in a conversation with somebody and I thought, Oh my God. Like it was like a slap in the face.
Yeah.
And now I look for that because I'm thinking like it shut me down in so many ways that I had no idea about. Because I thought, well, you know what, I'm not going to deal with that. Like I took the high, like I imagined myself being in the right and thinking, well, if I don't do that, then I don't have to worry about them getting all upset about this. And like it's the lies we tell ourselves.
Yes, yes, definitely. And you know, the patterns that we set up in our relationships with other people, and the unwillingness to be fully present and fully engaged in whatever that relationship is, when it maps to what we think it should be and when it doesn't map to what we think it should be. It's staying in the conversation. So a number of the women that I'm working with right now, they're recognizing it's not about the conversation. It's about the fact that they're willing to be in it.
Yes.
It makes a difference, right? As opposed to cherry picking the conversation that stabilizes their body. They engage in the conversation that emerges.
Mm-hmm.
And the conversation that emerges is the conversation that's going to take you where you want to go.
Because we manifest that, right?
Yes.
What we need will come to us if we are open to it and just let it happen.
Yeah. Well, you know, the on my blog some time back, I can't remember when, a couple of months maybe, there was a post there of a conversation with Nassim Haramein. And he was being interviewed by a dude, and they were talking about why so many people have such difficulty manifesting in their lives. And at about the 30-minute mark, Nassim Haramein starts talking about what is a human being. And of course, it's all the stuff we talk about that we've been talking about forever, that it really is, you know, a stream of intelligence that I'm not this device. I am the stream of intelligence that expresses through and emerges from this device into a world of matter. But I'm the stream of intelligence. And the stream of intelligence is always there. I'm never without access to that stream of intelligence. But when I shut my body down, if my body is the receiving device for this stream of consciousness, this intelligence, I'm actually shutting myself off from that intelligence, which means all I have left is what I already know.
Yes.
Habits and patterns.
Yes.
But habits and patterns are getting me the life I have. So if I want a different life, I can't just ramp up or ramp down those habits and patterns. I need new intelligence, which means I have to discover how to open my body to be able to access that. You know, you can think about it as a river that's constantly flowing, and you decide when you dive in and when you come out.
I
So
often think about it as like a satellite that's broadcasting, and I'm
yes,
an antenna picking it up.
yeah, exactly. The
The
difference is that the intelligence that I pick up transforms the receiver that I am.
Yes.
So this receiver is not fixed. When I access, you know, like if I'm picking up a radio signal, when I pick up that radio signal, it doesn't change the antenna. It doesn't change the receiver that I am. This flow of constant intelligence, the minute that I allow it to enter into the quantum biological device of my body as the wave, it completely transforms the receiver that I am. So that allowing myself, and that's one of the reasons, you know, I've noticed over my own experience in working with other people, it's one of the reasons why we cut ourselves off, because we know intuitively that if we allow that to penetrate, there is no going back.
Yeah.
Which means I won't be able to talk myself into staying in the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I won't be able to talk myself into staying in the job that I really don't want to do. You know, I won't be able to talk myself out of moving forward in my life. And then there's there's a falling domino effect with the people I'm in relationships with. So it starts to get complicated. It's complex, but it doesn't have to be messy. There are lots of moving parts, but they don't have to be in collision. So that you can allow yourself to relax into the flow of the intelligence, trust the intelligence to do what is required, and you be present in the interactions and the exchanges with the other people and the other moving parts.
When I think about my own experience, because I made some pretty dramatic shifts, the toughest things is for other people to reconcile, who are you? Like, because they suddenly don't recognize me anymore.
Right.
And with some people that's fine. They were casual relationships, or I didn't know them that well anyway. What I tend to struggle with the most are those intimate relationships that I have with my immediate family, where I'm staying true to myself and engaging with them. Because it takes two to tango, right? Like, and it's a process, and it's a challenge, and sometimes it's really frustrating.
Well, and I think yes, I agree with everything you're saying. It's all of those things. And at the same time, it's a massive opportunity.
Yeah.
It's a massive opportunity. So if I'm talking about myself in a relationship where I'm changing and people are starting to notice that, it's a massive opportunity for me to discover how deep is my commitment to myself. Because part of the cultural conditioning of women is for us to be able to easily capitulate.
Yes.
We don't want to make other people uncomfortable, right? Because then it's our fault that they're unhappy and blah,
Yes.
blah, blah. The whole bullshit thing goes on. But when someone would say to me, wow, you're really different. I don't know what's going on here. My answer would be, yeah, I am different. I don't know what's going on either. Like, I am a work in progress, right? I am in the process of discovering things that are making it feasible for me to determine what's meaningful, what do I really care about, and what is just habit and pattern. I don't want to live my life from habit and pattern. Yeah. And then they get really curious because they don't want to live their lives from habit and pattern either.
You know what my response is?
Changes. Huh?
You know what my response is to that? My husband actually said that to me, because we were separated for 5 years, two completely, and then we started to date again. We've been living under the same roof since this past June. And he used to look at me and he would say, you've changed. And before that would have been a trigger to get angry. And now it's like, thanks for noticing.
Yeah. Yeah. Before it was, you've changed, there's something wrong.
Exactly. That's a good thing. It's working.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I think the power of it is in the fact you're engaging it together.
Yes.
He's not having the observation and like making a note in his journal. Yeah. He's actually having the conversation with you.
Yes.
That's what I mean about the power is in engaging in the moment that you're in. Not waiting for the right moment to engage, but engage in the moment you're in. See where it goes.
Yes.
That requires curiosity. And it requires a willingness to not know. It requires a willingness to get it wrong. It requires a willingness to change your mind, all of those things that when you and I are growing up, we're told those are bad things.
Exactly.
So the decloaking and living authentically experience, whether it's in the audio material or whether it's in the room, the whole point of decloaking is to start taking apart it digs at the mortar between the bricks of the wall that we've created around our reality. And what happens is that the bricks start loosening and we begin to notice there is more to life in that area than what I know. So I can know more things. I can know different things. I can know differently. And all of the time it keeps coming back to, it's all about, my life is all about me and my perceptual filters. So I know that if I'm in a conversation with you, everything that's coming out of your mouth is all about you and your perceptual filters.
Yes.
So that when you're sitting across the table from someone you care about and you say something and they react adversely to what you've just said, that's all about them.
Mhm.
That's not because you've done anything wrong. But
That
whatever
was
it
a
is
hard
that
one
you've
to learn.
ever done, yeah, whatever it is, has caused them to go in to defend and protect. So listen at that point, just listen.
Yeah.
Without having to make yourself right or make them wrong. You just let it unfold.
Yeah. And the important part is to actually be in the same space so the conversation can
That
happen.
helps.
Yeah, because one of the things that I've noticed is that time goes on, those opportunities get fewer and far between. Because we kind of, especially with close relationships, sometimes we just write each other off. And
Yeah.
then there is no discussion, there is no opportunity to learn and grow.
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. It's something that I've only become mindful in the last week or so. Kind of through a book I was reading, and I thought, wow, I love books. But again, and books are great, but conversations are better, because then that's when we get to live the experiment. I worked with a lady before that said, make your life the laboratory. When you're learning these things, use them, and that, because that's really the only way that it's going to become part of you.
Yeah.
I approached it at the very beginning, Louise, as a very theoretical exercise. Where I could learn some stuff, but I don't need half of that. And then
Right.
the deeper I got into it, the more I realized, oh, no, I really need this.
Were you in the year-long Crohn's experience?
I was not.
Okay.
I don't know when that would have been, but I actually started my journey with WEL-Systems with Holly in New Glasgow
Okay.
back in 2017. And then after I took an ICF training course, then I contacted you one day because I thought, what the hell do I do next? Like, I was jobless and homeless, and I thought, okay, there's got to be a better way here. And you pointed me to Sheila, and have had several amazing. I redid decloaking with her. I did engaging twice, and then I did manifesting, and then came to code model coaching,
Well,
and all along the way, just kind of peeling back the layers.
right. And that's the power of it, right? Because it's not that there I've done decloaking, tick, I'm done.
Yeah.
It's about layer after layer after layer of the range of conversation that's available. So the decloaking conversation is really about, it's an educational process that says, here are different perceptual filters. The engaging conversation, there's no end to that one, because there's no end to our relationships. There's no end to the way that we interact with other people. And the manifesting meaningful life conversation, there's no end to that one either, because it really is about, who do I get to be today? Who do I choose? How does the living God force that I am, not God, the big eye in the sky, but as the force of creation, how does the living God force that I am choose to live my life today? And actually intentionally explore that every day when you get up.
Mm-hmm.
That puts a very different spin on your day. But I was going to say, oh yeah, the Crohn's thing. One of the things that when I did the sexual, sensual, spiritual being audio material, when we did that was a 4-day retreat. We talked about a continuum of expression of being for women, so that maiden goddess crone in our culture is typically thought about chronologically.
Mm-hmm.
So that as a young child, I have the characteristics and the layers of expression of maiden. As an adult woman in my fertile years, I'm goddess. And then, the old dried up wizened windbag over here, that's the crone. So we have a very different perspective of that. So when I did the Crohn's audio material, which for your listeners, they can get for free on the website, it's really looking at where is the power in the expression of my being as crone? And where is it not showing up in my life? If you do not have the expression of capital B being of crone, boundaries are going to be very difficult.
Mhm.
Right? So the wisdom of the crone, the unfuckwithableness of the crone, the ability to speak from that expression of your being where you're not asking permission and you have a clarity of intention that causes you to be the guardian of your own vision. You know, when we did the book, Guardians of the Vision, around the parenting conversation, that was about parents being willing to be the guardian of the vision for their children, of their potential. But as an adult, that's my job. It becomes my job to be the guardian of my own vision, to be able to take full ownership of and hold sacred the intentionality that I carry in my life. So, I mean, you know, when we talk about an 8-year-old that's really, really precocious, for example, and is very definite about how they move through the world, that is the crone expression in the body of that 8-year-old. So it's not a chronological thing. It has to do with wisdom, and it has to do with connection to a much deeper sense of self.
Mhm.
So as women age, without a deep connection to the aspect of our being that is crone, it's very easy for us to be buffeted
Mhm.
by external circumstances. And it's very easy for us to find the warrior. When in my model of the world, what's required is not the warrior, it's the creator. If I'm in a reality that does not source and nurture my soul, as the creator of my reality, I create another one. But there's nothing for me to assault. There's nothing for me to fight against. And there is no impact of someone seeking to assault me. So to be able to move through your world with the realization that you're the guardian of your own sacred vision. You know, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, I developed this concept of the boundless leader self.
Mhm.
And because I did a lot of leadership work when I was in corporate environments and, you know, what is leadership and blah, blah, yada, yada. And the bottom line is that if you cannot be leader in your own life, the quality of your own life, you know, creating boundaries and being able to hold to them, finding ways to trust yourself to engage in explorations with people you care about, knowing that doesn't matter where it goes, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Right? Being able to stand in that. It's very difficult for you to stand anywhere else.
Yeah.
And be able to have impact in the quality of your life. So this idea of the Stella is doing the year-long Crohn's thing, and I think that the and these are for women who they've done decloaking and other things. It's a commitment. It's a commitment to 12 months, but beyond that, it's a commitment to yourself.
Right.
You know that every month somebody's going to care that you did or didn't engage yourself. You know, somebody's going to notice that you sold yourself down the river over here. Someone else is going to notice that this big black hole over here that you've been avoiding, there's a whole pile of stuff in there waiting for you. You know, that's where the goodies are, right? They're in the big black holes.
Yes.
So it's really being able to say, how are you going to create for yourself? And you're doing that through these conversations. You're creating for yourself exchanges and explorations with other people that are you drawing yourself out.
Yes.
Right? So you're inviting someone else into your life because you're the space.
Yep. And that's something that took a long time to just be able to be, and I was afraid. Not quite sure what I was afraid of, maybe outcome, I don't know. But but now that I'm doing it, I absolutely love it. It's so much fun to talk to people. Louise, I love that question. Like, how does the God force in me choose to live my life today? And I try to ask myself that every morning. Most mornings I do remember. One of the things that I've been asking myself at WEL in the evening is, what parts of myself today was I not real happy with that I might like to leave behind? Because I want to move towards something as opposed to moving away from something. But there's times when I have to identify those things that I didn't like so that I'm mindful not to repeat that again.
I'm not so sure that, of course, this is me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not so sure about the leaving behind part.
Okay.
That at the end of the day, when I look back on my day, the question that I would ask myself that would provoke the emergence of those things you're talking about. The question would be more along the lines of, when I look back on my day, was my day worthy of the God force that I know myself to be? And the minute that I ask that question, right? So all the places where I, cheaped out on myself, and the places where I slithered out of a line of inquiry, those are the places where then I look at that and I go, wow, what was the opportunity that I missed? Because the moment that I notice that, I can create that again.
Yes.
Right? Because it's never over. I mean, that's the amazing part about all of it. I look back on my day and I notice things that, oh, wow, I could have done that differently. And if I had done that differently, what would I have discovered? Because you'll discover it.
Yeah.
So you don't even have to be in the process of discovery in that moment. It's just revisiting that moment puts you into the opportunity for discovery.
So the curiosity is enough.
Exactly.
Recalling it.
Exactly.
Fascinating.
It's all you anyway. It was all you when it happened, and it's still all just you when you're revisiting.
Yes. Now, I love the concept of manifesting, and that's something that I kind of had to come kicking and screaming to that, to really believe that it was true. And I completely believe it now. To the extent that I wanted to call my dog when I got him last year Manny for manifesting, but my daughters kind of rolled their eyes at that. So I thought, okay, maybe. So I kind of cheated on myself on that when I called them Moose instead. But that's neither here nor there. But it's a process, right? So the three kind of basic programs that were set up that you've talked about are like decloaking, engaging, and manifesting. And there really is a building block structure to that. With decloaking and living authentically, is it Sheila and Stella the only two that are doing that one right now?
Right now.
Right
Yeah.
now. And because when I get people that might be interested, that's where I will send them to. I'm not prepared to do that one yet. I can see maybe in the future. Like I'm getting ready to do my magic, which is kind of decloaking light.
Yes.
Kind of putting my toes in the water. And I kind of, that was going to start in September, but then summer kind of got in the way and I changed my mind. So I thought, okay, I'll do that a little bit later, but that's kind of where I'm heading now, because to your point about educating, like people need to understand that there's different ways of looking at our lives. We can use different perceptual filters. And I think that's something that we're not really made aware of. Like you said, we are told that this is the way the world is and we don't question.
Decloaking is whether it's the 5-day, which is a deep dive, or listening to the audio material, the educational component is the intention behind decloaking. So the idea is to be able to notice there are lots of different ways to see the world. So here's another way for you to consider your life, your world, and the way you move through that world that potentially can open a gateway for you to be much more effective in living a meaningful, intentional, joyous life. So there are people who have had the decloaking experience and for whom that was enough, in the sense that they left the decloaking experience with a problem solved.
Mhm.
And my experience has been, at some point in time, it's not enough, because they begin to notice the effect of it in their lives, and they begin to consider bigger and bigger aspects of their lives. Oh, here comes another blast. The engaging and awakening others conversation is the constant deep dive into the things that mess us up. So until you're ready to turn into a pillar of vibrating white light and ascend, engaging conversation is always going to be a deeply valuable and meaningful conversation for people, because it's about life. It's about how life is unfolding, and not just focusing on the parts of my life that work. It's really looking at, how big do I want my life to be? How else do I want to incorporate aspects of creation into my life that press me into that greater unfolding of my own potential? Because it's very easy for us to get comfortable.
Absolutely. And I found engaging really interesting in that you talk sometimes about how you don't necessarily need words to explain what's going on. I experienced things during engaging that I released or I processed that I have absolutely no words for. I just know it was done. And I felt lighter. And, when you talk about intentional, meaningful and joyous, like, wow, what a goal for life. Like,
Yeah.
and coming out of that, I started to feel that joy that I thought, wow, now this is the place that I want to be.
Yes. Yes. And the engaging experience is designed to be the application of the perceptual filters from decloaking.
Mhm.
So you're now taking those perceptual filters and the context and process that now becomes intentional and mindful for you, and now you're applying it to your life. So engaging is the deep dive into the recognition of patterns and habits from history that are still driving your bus today. You may not even know it's happening. It might be a tone of voice that all of a sudden changes your internal state. It might be the recognition of a design in someone's home that causes information to begin to move in your body. So what we're talking about is the wave.
Yes.
And the more comfortable you and I become, the more adept we become with the recognition that the wave is the sacred arriving in tissue. And we trust that and we relax into that, the more expansive the insights that come with that, because now you're tapping into that river of intelligence, and you're basically allowing that river of intelligence to descend and flow through your body. And it's the river of intelligence that is altering the neural structures of your device, because that is how you process, and there isn't anything for you to do. And it doesn't matter if you have a story about it. The story is completely irrelevant. And that's about processing speed. So it's the difference between a very slow processing speed that requires language and has a story attached to it. And then the other end of that continuum is the psychic intuitive, where that intelligence streams through the device at speeds that are impossible to calibrate for language and content. But it's the same destination. It's just you get there faster. And you don't have to have the angst and the drama and the trauma that goes with the narrative, because it's done.
And so many of those things they go back to when we're little, right? Like a lot of it's early family systems, right? You know, it's interesting. So a lot of things got processed when I did engaging, particularly the second time round. And I think I was more open to it. I was more at home with the material. Yeah. But I spent a week in my family home by myself this past summer. The first time I've ever done that. My dad has passed away a couple of years ago. My mom has been moved to a retirement home. And I was refusing to process. I was refusing to just let it be. Louise, I spent a week there. I came back here and my asthma kicked up and I coughed for 3 solid weeks. I was a mess most of the summer. And it only occurred to me when it finally started to clear that I thought, oh, I know what that was. There was just so much emotion attached to it, right? There's some grieving that hadn't been processed, and I shut it down. I kept myself really busy. I was running off to do this and running off to do that, so I didn't have to just be in that space.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and that's the interesting aspect of it. So so this is a story I'll make up about it. Because you intentionally were unwilling, you brought it home with you and it manifested as illness, right? It manifests through the tissue of the body. Any illness is a communication. And my experience with it is that it's our secrets and lies that kill us. Our secrets and lies, secrets that we keep from ourselves and lies we tell ourselves, secrets we keep from others and lies we tell others. Deadly stuff.
throat chakra.
Exactly.
My throat was clogged for 3 weeks.
And cancers, all kinds of cancers and, all kinds of stuff that goes on. My story about it is that if you had allowed quantum TLC to just deal with it, it would have been over in moments, periodically, here and there, through the process of the days, and it would have been done.
And I just shut it down. Like, I have to do this, I have to do that. Like I was aware of it only afterwards. I did not.
Yeah, you weren't a bad girl. Okay. It isn't that you did it wrong. But it's recognizing that the shutting it down is an intentional override. That which is intuitive to us is for it to move, right? And oftentimes we shut it down because we tell ourselves, if I don't shut this down, I'm not going to get done what I have to get done. And it's actually the opposite that occurs.
That's the story we tell ourselves.
It's the story we tell ourselves. I mean, that's basically saying being alive, which is the flow of that intelligence through the device, is getting in the way of living. That makes no sense at all.
Yeah.
Right? So it's being able to recognize that quantum TLC is not a strategy, it's a state of being. It is a state of surrender to our divinity, for lack of a different way to put it. It is a moment of surrender, and it's a moment. It passes. It isn't that it takes us out of reality and drops us into something else. It just kind of, go with the flow. And in this moment in the flow, it's a wave. And then the wave gets processed, and then you go and clean out the fridge. And then you're going along, and here comes another wave. And then you go and, get all the crap out of the basement. You know how it goes. But it is part of being alive. It's not an interruption, and it's not an aberration. That is what being alive looks like and feels like and sounds like. But you and I have been taught, oh my God, don't go there.
Yeah.
That means there's something wrong, something's terrible. Don't do that because you'll never come out. You lose yourself to that, you'll never come out. Right? None of that's true.
I remember my mom saying, like, when I was really upset when I was little, stop crying, you'll make yourself sick. Well, she was right, but don't stop, just let it go. Let it
exactly. That's really excellent conditioning. Wow. Way to go, Mom.
Exactly.
The thing is that so much of this, like 100% of this, in my model of the world, is intuitive. And all that we're doing with decloaking and engaging, etc., is a reclamation of the intuitive.
That internal referencing that if we just listen to it, we're going to be okay.
And that we already know. Well, the reason I started a few months ago, I started this monthly event that I do called Navigating Chaos. So there on my blog, I've got some audio clips from the conversations that went on there. Because I think the insanity that we are living in right now, and no one is spared, there is nothing in the world that is going on that is a repetition from an existing pattern. It's like someone took all the puzzle pieces on the table and threw them all up in the air. Mm-hmm. We don't even know what the puzzle looks like anymore. We have no idea where the pieces are going to land. We have no idea if some are going to get lost as they come down. We don't know how they fit together. Like there is no historical touchstone mm-hmm. that says, this is how I've been doing it since I was 30. I'm just going to keep doing it that way. It's not happening because the people with the leverage, whoever they happen to be, are literally taking apart the systemic supports that have always been there that allowed for patterns and repetition. They're gone. Yeah. So if I have to decide, as I'm navigating this chaos, I have to decide, where am I going to stand for me to be able to make choices that are in alignment with what is my truth? Mm-hmm. And to be able to have explorations around the internal states that people are experiencing right now, incredible states of vulnerability, huge states of feeling manipulated, lots and lots of deep and intentional fear. The whole conversation around nudge groups that were a big part of the federal government's program and drive for vaccination. How do you leverage people into the jab? So they had all these marketing things that they were doing. It's basically mind control. Yeah. So how can you tell when you're being manipulated? How can you tell what is mind control, et cetera? And I started it because in my own experience, I wanted to have the conversations that would be out of the box mm-hmm. compared to whether it's mainstream media or whether it's alternative media. It's still, I don't follow mainstream media anymore, but it's still it's at a level of thinking and logical levels. Mm-hmm. It's at the strategy level, maybe pushing up a little bit about, beliefs, values, and attitudes. But my feeling about it is I wanted to have the conversations that were above the choice point down. Mm-hmm. I wanted to have the conversations that questioned everything. Yeah. Questioned at the process and context level, the legitimacy of the underpinnings of the chaos that we're experiencing. And how do you choose to live differently?
Yeah, because it's all outside of us, right? And it's so if we're externally referencing and we're always looking at something out there as an anchor, oh, we're in trouble.
I agree with you.
Because the sand is shifting constantly. Like there's no way to know what's coming next. And it's like, so I stopped watching mainstream media a long time ago too, because it was depressing. Like, and what's true, what's not, what's spin, like, cause there's lots of money behind all this stuff and there's agendas being pushed constantly. But it's the fact that I could trust my intuition to know who I was quite frankly huge. It was like, I can't even think of a big enough word for it. Yeah. Because it was because I was always externally referencing, okay, I should do this. I should be at this stage of my career. I should have this family. I should, 1.2 kids, like whatever. But there's nothing wrong with any of that stuff. But what is it that is important to me? What is meaningful and intentional and joyous to me? It took me a long time to realize that I was allowed to ask that question.
And answer it for yourself.
Exactly, exactly. And it's not selfish.
Yeah.
That's kind of one of the spins on all like self-care. And it's like, you know what? If we cannot be our best selves, we damn sure cannot be in a collective.
I agree with you. Certainly not a collective that sustains life.
Yes, we have to learn to stand on our own 2 feet. And you know, like, and what I mean by that is it doesn't mean we can do whatever we want. Like, you know, being my truth doesn't mean I'm gonna, you know, get a bunch of guns and shoot stuff up. That's not what I'm talking about. But to know myself and to trust myself means that I can open up myself to the world around me, and I can have conversations, and I don't have to be afraid of what comes out of my mouth.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's interesting because one of the recent, again, I have this very privileged way of moving through the world because I get to be included in some of the more challenging and compelling explorations in people's lives that that require that I stay present and that I stay emergent in my way of engaging in these conversations. And one of the conversations that we've recently been exploring was along the lines of the Guardians of the Vision conversation, the conversation about the power of the process of parenting. And that parenting is really the delivery channel, the delivery mechanism for culture. Mm-hmm. That how you are parented determines your reality, determines how you consider and shape your reality. And we were talking about the pressures of the systems of the surrogate authority. So if your parents are your primary authority in your life, the church becomes a surrogate for that authority. The school becomes a surrogate for that authority. The dentist becomes you don't challenge the dentist any more than you challenge your mother. Like, it's not going to happen, right? So it's really looking at that and beginning to recognize that the underpinnings of those systems are the same as the underpinnings, for example, of going through the whole COVID debacle and the pressure to be jabbed. And how those people who chose not that for themselves, and the degree of commitment to quote unquote resistance that was required because the pressure was so enormous to comply. Yeah. So the pressure at school is enormous to comply. The pressure at church is enormous to comply. And what we're dealing with is mind control. Mm-hmm. But we don't think about it because it's a much higher order of entrainment of mind. We don't think about what we're experiencing relative to mind control. So when you start to become aware in navigating chaos, starting to notice where mind control is being applied so that you are less likely to be dragged into it, because your body is going to respond to it and you're going to respond to your body. But if you don't even know that mind control is an underpinning of our culture now, it's been going on for at least 50 years. Yeah. You don't recognize the collective impact of that mind control. You just think it's real.
Well, like, think about your cell phone, right? Like a smartphone. You know, when you look up an ad for a mattress, and then all of a sudden you've got all these mattress ads coming at you. Or, you know, people love their GPS. That's tracking where all the cell phones are. Like, all of that stuff is.
Yeah. So we think we're just really lucky that we have all these free apps, you know, and they're all data collection points.
Yeah.
So the things that we think, how nice of them to do that for us, they're not doing that for us at all. They're doing that for their data collection. And we haven't even started with the effect of AI.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, like I was listening to a show on CBC radio. one Sunday night when I was driving back home, and the guy was talking about, you know, the little vacuums that go around the, they were actually broadcasting the dimensions of
Roombas.
houses. Yeah, broadcasting the dimensions of houses back to, so that so they've got all this data. Like it's incredible what is collected on us.
Well, and that's a passive form of data collection. Then you have the algorithms that are making the decisions about whether or not you qualify for a mortgage.
Mm.
And you can't negotiate with the algorithm.
Yeah.
So more and more artificial intelligence is going to be applied in a decision-making capacity.
Yes.
So already the transactions on Wall Street, for example, they're all done through artificial intelligence, and they're done in like a millionth of a nanosecond.
Yeah. Lightning.
So these are the things that, as the pressure on human beings in our culture today to capitulate to technology. I mean, if you look at the generation of, young teens today, let's say 14 to 16, somewhere in there, and younger in some families, their entrainment is not with people. Their entrainment is with their device.
A device.
So they're sitting around a table, and they're texting each other, but they're sitting right there, right? But they don't communicate with each other. They're on their phones.
My girls, I was shocked when my kids were getting into high school. I got them cell phones, and they weren't smartphones at that time. They were very rudimentary phones. But I remember driving my daughters and one of their friends someplace one day, and there was no conversation in the car. They were texting each other. I was shocked. And I thought, wow, we're losing the ability to have face-to-face conversations and to read like things like emotions and to understand that this is a human interaction. That is not.
I'm a big fan of Greg Braden's work. He's done a lot of, the three amigos there, Bruce Lipton and Greg Braden and Dispenza, and then of course Nassim Harriman got involved in all the work that he's doing. But Nassim and Greg Braden, I think, have taken it a layer, a deeper expression of what it is to be human, and looking at that relative to the pressures in the culture today to be not human. To be able to look at modifications that would make it, that would cripple us in our ability to be able to access that river of intelligence. Mm-hmm. Right? Because to me, that's what it's all about. I'm not the device. I am the constantly flowing river of intelligence. I'm the whole thing. Like in the great cosmic tip, I'm not the spiral, I'm the void, right? That whole idea. And these are conversations that, like we were talking earlier, if you're in a conversation with your daughter, your willingness to dare to completely reveal in the moment, not as a solution, but as a marker on the journey of your evolution. That's all it is. It's a snapshot in time, right? But it's not absolute, and it's not the ending. It's just saying, here's where I am in the process of my evolution, and being able to be open and to share that perspective with other people. Some of the stuff that Greg Braden talks about is he puts it in terms of our divinity, being able to be sovereign in our own bodies, in our own device, and not have that manipulated. So the whole transhumanism movement is about moving away from that intrinsic, intuitive divinity of our capital B being and trading it off for something else. Probably what a lot of Canadians don't know is our federal government has a government department on transhumanism. So this is already being embedded and already influencing policy development in our government. I mean, never mind the fact that we're run by a criminal cartel called the federal government, but that's just my opinion. There's people don't think about it. It's not a conversation that's going on at the dinner table. And
Well, the
yet,
conversations going on at the dinner table are often like smoke and mirrors. It's like the latest thing that, Donald Trump has said, or like, people are gravitate to the craziness that's going on out there. And it always makes me wonder, what else is going on here? Like, why is
well,
this?
exactly. Exactly. That's part of the mind control stuff, right? Look over here. Look over here. Well, I pick your pocket over here. It's like, it's that kind of thing. But I think the importance is the intentionality of being willing to emerge into the conversation that's presenting and hijack it. I'm big on hijacking the conversation and redirect it to something that's meaningful, because, your time is your life.
Yeah.
When you and I spend our time in meaningless drivel,
Yeah.
that becomes the quality of my life.
Yes.
And my belief about it is that everybody's up to it.
Yeah.
Everybody is up for the deeper conversation, the more meaning. I think people are starved for intimacy.
I agree.
And I think you have to go first.
Yeah. You know what? And it's like, just look at the mind numbing things that are out there, right? Like Netflix. I mean, great for entertainment, but if you end up if you're binging shows all the time, then how does that contribute to your life? How is that making your life intentional, meaningful, and joyous? Like that, I think those three words are important keywords, I think, and it's important to ask ourselves those questions, because it's really easy to sleepwalk through your life.
Well, I think we're trained to sleepwalk through life, so that makes it really challenging, right?
But when you think about and for me, I'm all about infinite possibilities. I believe people are capable of amazing things, of deep, experiences. Because for me, it's not about stuff anymore. It really isn't. It's about what can I feel or do or be in this moment that will make a difference for me. And that's what I'd like to see other people engaging in too. Like when it's the last 3 years have shut us down so much. And I think I'm seeing a trend for people they're really getting sick of it, right? Like it's everything is predictable, everything is monotonous and mundane, and you need, variety is the spice of life, right? You need to get some excitement in there somehow.
See, my belief about it is that you're in the quality of life that you want to create for yourself. You're the seed of potential. So you're the one, because you're awake, because you're aware, because you have a desire for more, because you're looking to go a little bit deeper and you're looking to go broader, then you become the seed of potential for other people by hijacking the conversation and creating the opportunity for a conversation that is bigger than the moment you're in and bigger than the moment that others are in, and they're drawn to the potential. Like you're doing with magic.
Yeah.
Like you're doing with this conversation that you've created. You're making it possible for others to contemplate a potential for themselves that they would not have thought of had you not provoked its presence in their lives.
I find it interesting. I've always joked that talking is my superpower. I can talk, but it's always been to fill space.
Yes.
It's never been to provoke or to get people thinking in a different direction. It was kind of almost entertain.
Yep.
Keep things moving, no awkward silences and that sort of thing. And now it's like, there's times when I've got nothing to say because I'm not interested in the conversation. I'll go read a book or something.
Well, and then the next layer is for you to discover that you actually enjoy being the blessed irritant.
Yeah. I think I'm still having a problem with that one.
That one awaits you.
Okay. Something to look forward to.
Something to look forward to.
Although my daughters would say I'm there.
Well, see, and they're very lucky that they have you in their lives at this point in their lives where you are.
It's Well, yeah, because we can learn so much from each other, right? Like I think you're right. It has nothing to do with age. It's intensity and where we are and what we're willing to risk for that, again, intentional, meaningful, and joyous.
Agreed.
Louise, this has been such a pleasure.
I think we went over our 30 minutes.
I
but-
know, I'm just looking at the time and I'm thinking, my gosh, we've been talking for an hour and a half and it feels like about 15 minutes.
It's great. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
As have I. Thank you so much again for doing this. I'll put your information up as I posted. That'll happen in the next couple of days. I actually broke down and replaced my laptop in the last month because I kept running out of capacity. So I realized I had to do something.
Yeah, good point.
Any last words that you have for us?
Just appreciation. I'm really enjoying what you're creating and really honored to be a part of it in this way with you. And I really look forward to who else you're going to attract to yourself.
Thank you so much for this. I appreciate it so much. And like I said, your body of knowledge has changed my life in such a huge way. Like I would never have been brave enough to even have the inclination to know what changes to make or what questions to ask had it not been for getting introduced to this back in 2017. So thank you.
Thank you for that. I'm glad it made a difference for you.
Huge, huge. Next time we'll have to talk about the title of your book. But it's the one about the horse. When the horse dies, get off.
But it's the subtitle is "And Stop Dragging It Around."
And stop dragging it around. I know, I love the title.
It's one of my I have fond memories of that. I wrote it when I was in Hawaii. But it's a quick read, right? Because those are the topics that I would find myself repeatedly in a rant in the program room. So it's about relationships and religion and parenting and all the hot buttons in our lives. And it's intended to be provocative. So I think it's a gentle yet a very direct way of drawing attention to the things that's in that black hole over there that we don't want to go anywhere near the edge.
Exactly. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll look forward to watching your future shows.
Okay, take care.
Bye.